invite people to just go back in time as far as their imaginations can take them.
The beauty and romance of lighthouses masks the dangers of the deadly shores they guard.
These shores early on were uncharted, so the ships were getting destroyed on these sandbars in the storms. And that was really the reason for the lighthouses.
This is where lighthouses began in America. The first lighthouses showed the way to safe harbor for ships carrying goods and immigrants to the New World.
It doesn't go out, it doesn't move, it's always in the same place and you can always depend on it.
The first lighthouses on these shores helped build a nation. They fostered the growing maritime economy of the colonies, safeguarding the lifeline between the Old World and new harbors from Boston to the Chesapeake Bay. Beavertail Light Station, Rhode Island, was the country's third lighthouse. Built too near the water, it collapsed. Its original tower lay buried and lost until it was exposed by a hurricane in 1938. The present square granite tower was built in 1856. It was strategically placed to mark the entrance to the important harbors of Narragansett Bay. It allowed Rhode Island to successfully compete with Massachusetts for trade with England and the West Indies. Narragansett Bay remains an active shipping area. Several historic lights continue to guide vessels around the bay. Nearby Newport, Rhode Island is one of the most popular sailing areas of the North Atlantic.
This is the Rhode Island light. Locally it's called the green light. This light marks the north end of Newport Harbor. People use it to steer into Narragansett Bay, so it's quite a necessary light. And just past it, of course, you can see Rose Island Light, which is the object of all sorts of affection.
Charlotte Johnson is the director of the Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation.
Someone told me very early on when I started working on the Rose Island Lighthouse that nobody didn't like a lighthouse or a caboose. And we found that to be true.
Rose Island Lighthouse was saved by a group of local citizens. Just a short boat ride from fashionable Newport takes guests back to a vastly different time and allows them to experience what it was like to be a lighthouse keeper over a century ago.
We invite people to just go back in time as far as their imaginations can take them. Upstairs, you can become the keeper of the week, and downstairs, you become the keeper for a night. We let everybody take care of not only themselves, but the lighthouse while they're here. It's mostly adventure and, romance and all this wonderful kind of stuff that's going on. It's a wonderful place to visit. The first time keepers come out here for the week on a Sunday afternoon, I think they're pretty overwhelmed with what the responsibilities are. But within a couple of days, it gets kind of ironed out. The lighthouse is only on 1.5 acres of land. In Rhode Island, our state constitution guarantees everyone the privileges of the shore. So you can walk around this entire island at the low tide line. You just make sure that the seaweed line is above you and the water's below you, and you are on public property. People are welcome to come in their own boats from 10 until 4, and they can get into a lighthouse and There's the lighthouse.
I know.
You ready for it?
I'm so excited. I can't handle it.
So we'll get you situated in the lighthouse, and then I'll give you some idea of
As a new couple arrives to begin their week as lightkeepers at Rose Island, another couple is ending their time as keepers. Ricardo Berenati and Catherine Saburin discovered Rose Island Lighthouse on an earlier visit to Newport. They knew immediately that they wanted to become keepers of the light.
Coming to Rose Island, you are isolated. You become part of what this was 100 years ago. Now it's like an oasis from life, but to those people back then, it must have been a hard life. Hard life. Some people call us an innkeeper. We are not innkeepers. When we take the assignment to stay at the lighthouse, we become lighthouse keepers. We have duties that have to be performed every day, starting at 8 o'clock. Okay. Temperature at observation, 63. Minimum temperature, 58. We'll reset it. All locked in. Next, the rain.
It was stressful at the beginning for us, just coming from the real world. And with all of our chores that we were assigned or told that we could be allowed to do, we got into it, and it was really, we got to enjoy them. We really, really loved it.
It was just wonderful not having any connection or communication with the outside world. It's just a wonderful experience.
Probably one of the neatest things is to see how satisfied people are with themselves when they leave.
Charlotte Johnson is more than just the caretaker of Rose Island Lighthouse. She knows everything about the lighthouse and how it works, and more importantly, what it represents.
It's just this wonderful thing that says, here is a structure that represents people caring for other people. And as we become part of maintaining this structure, you become part of caring. And it's really a wonderful thing to be identified with in that way.
Just across the bay from Rose Island is the Lime Rock Lighthouse, home to a remarkable woman who became one of the most famous lighthouse keepers in America. The Ida Lewis Yacht Club is named for the lighthouse keeper's teenage daughter, who rescued several people from the chilly waters of Narragansett Bay. Ida grew up working as her father's assistant. A few years after his death in 1872, she was officially appointed keeper. Her own demise in 1911 ended more than half a century of service at Lime Rock. Lighthouse author Eleanor DeWire.
Ida did things that women usually didn't do in her day. She pulled up her skirts and got into a boat and rowed and rescued. I think rescuing was her hallmark. That was really what made her different from a lot of other women of her day. People just fell in love with the idea that here was a young girl who was doing all these self-sacrificing things and making a good name for the ladies. After 1869, when she appeared on the cover of Harper's, I think she was more surprised than anyone that she should be famous. And I think she was kind of a media heroine. She probably wondered, why me? And she shunned all of that. I think she wanted to stay out here and just keep the light. The Lime Rock light wasn't a very significant light. It's a harbor light. The light is very small, very inconspicuous. It's in a little window upstairs out the bedroom, and Ida or her father, whomever kept it, would have just leaned out and kindled the oil lamp and back in it. It was very simple. But I think because we had this one woman who was very unique in the way that she rescued and she was viewed by the public, it's gained a place in immortality.
The New London Harbor Light was another of the early colonial lighthouses. Nearly a century and a half after it was built, a second lighthouse was needed to warn ships away from the dangerous shoals at the entrance to the harbor. The new beacon casts its beam from perhaps the most unusual lighthouse in the country, a three-story French-style structure built on submerged rock. No one knows exactly why designers chose this style for the New London Ledge Lighthouse, so out of character with its surrounding. Still, the dramatic setting and eccentric design have generated an abundance of lighthouse folklore.
I've never been to a lighthouse where there hasn't been a ghost story. I mean, they're eerie places. There's strange sounds and echoes. Ernie is very famous because he's been reported over and over again, and he's gained a personality. I've looked at the records and have found absolutely nothing that supports that there was ever a keeper there who was killed, yet everyone I've ever talked to who lived there says, yeah, something is there. It moves tools around. I was told that one night Ernie picked up a pillow and tried to smother one of the keepers. When you're there, the wind moves around through the windows. It would certainly freak me out if I stayed the night. It's just a very eerie place.
This is Coast Guard Light Station Boston with the weather.
Light Station Boston, Group Boston, good afternoon, senior traffic.
Group lights cloudy, visibility 10, winds east-southeast at 16.
Boston Light Station is the oldest lighthouse location in America. It is also the last lighthouse in the country fully manned by the Coast Guard.
Light Group, good copy on the weather, stand by, you went out.
Light Station out.
The first Boston lighthouse was built on Little Brewster Island in 1716 by the colony of Massachusetts to aid shipping at Boston Harbor. During the Revolutionary War, American troops twice attempted to destroy Boston Light to keep it from being used by the British. In 1776, as the British fleet left Boston, one of their last acts was to blow up the tower. It was rebuilt in 1783 with walls 7 feet thick at the base and 75 feet high. Later, another 14 feet were added to the tower. Petty Officer Scott Stanton commands a 3-man Coast Guard team stationed at Boston Lighthouse. He's the last official lighthouse keeper in America.
It's definitely a unique position. There was 66 light keepers before me, and I don't think I'm going to get the full impact of it all until I leave here and look back on it and say, wow, you know, that was a pretty neat job. I think it was a much harder job back then. You know, they had to row their boats everywhere they wanted to go. They couldn't just run ashore for food or water. Even the things that we do today on a daily basis, such as replenishing our water supply or our fuel for the boat, takes 2 or 3 times as long as it does if you were on the mainland all the time. There's always something that needs to be fixed. There's always something that needs to be painted or cleaned. Well, the lens gets a weekly cleaning with a lint-free cloth. If there's hand marks or smudges or something on it, we'll take a little Windex to it.
The Fresnel lens at Boston Lighthouse is more than 140 years old. Fresnel technology revolutionized American lighthouses in the mid-1800s. French physicist Augustin Fresnel designed 7 different sizes or orders of lenses. The largest were for tall seacoast lighthouses. The smallest were for harbor and bay lighthouses. The Fresnel lens is a curtain of prisms centered around a bullseye. The design bent the light into a concentrated beam that could be seen over a great distance. Maintaining the second-order lens at Boston Lighthouse is something Scott Stanton and his crew take as seriously as the many keepers who came before them.
Lighthouses aren't as key to navigation as they once were with all the electronics that we have. But there still are some boats out there without it, and if the light helps one mariner a year from going up on the rocks, I think then it's worth it.
"6 miles south of Little Brewster Island, an awesome spectacle seems to ride atop the ocean waves. Just below the surface lurks a deadly obstacle to navigation in the North Atlantic, Minot's Ledge. It was long thought to be impossible to build a lighthouse at this dangerous yet crucial spot. The need for a lighthouse outweighed the risks. The first lighthouse was built on steel legs embedded in the rocky ledge. Almost from the first, keepers noticed an uneasy swaying motion when storms hit the tower. A committee examined the structure and declared that Minot's Ledge Lighthouse could withstand any storm. They were wrong. Lighthouse author and historian Ross Holland.
Then a really serious storm came along, and that just took them and twisted those legs off the rocks that they were glued to, and 2 men were killed. The keeper of the lighthouse, however, had gone ashore just before the storm, and he was listening one night, and there was a violent ringing of the fog bell, with the result that the lighthouse, the people felt that something had happened to it, and indeed it had. It wasn't there the next day. They found the bodies a couple of days later.
The collapse of the Minot's Ledge Lighthouse is considered one of America's worst lighthouse tragedies. The second lighthouse built at Minot's Ledge is among the most daring design and construction feats in U.S. lighthouse history. A stone lighthouse was constructed on land at nearby Cohasset, Massachusetts. It was then dismantled and moved row by row onto the ledge during low tide. Construction took 5 years. For nearly a century, keepers lived within its massive walls with little fear of being swept away.
That is a strong structure, but its most important feature, I think, outside of strength, is that it was round, and that water would just break against it and go around it and not smash into it and act as a hammer beating on the lighthouse tower. It's survived, it's in great shape, it's automated now, and it's no complaints about it.
When Henry David Thoreau walked these beaches in the mid-1800s, he called Cape Cod the bared and bended arm of Massachusetts. Reaching 70 miles into the Atlantic, Cape Cod is a formidable obstacle to navigation. The sweeping ocean and shifting sands which make the Cape so dangerous for ships have also carved a spectacular ocean retreat of protected beaches and majestic dunes.
Every day the sea is carving up the shoreline, and you can go down to the beach in Truro or Provincetown or Wellfleet, and you can see a different beach every day.
Greg O'Brien has spent much of his life on Cape Cod. He has written books and produced films about the Cape.
To me, the quintessential Cape Cod experience is to walk the outer beach from Wellfleet down to Provincetown, because you can go along the outer beach in stretches where you won't see a soul. There probably isn't a town that epitomizes Cape Cod more than Truro. 2/3 of Truro is within the Cape Cod National Seashore, which is beautiful because it will never be disturbed. I can take you on roads and back roads in Truro that haven't changed in hundreds of years and look the same as when Thoreau walked Cape Cod. These are old stagecoach paths, and they're back roads, and a lot of people don't know about them. These are roads which you'll find the old cottages off, you'll find old cranberry bogs, you'll find bluffs, and you'll find no people. Cape Cod is so spectacular. It's just a sense that it's bigger than all of us. It's more beautiful than all of us, and we're all attracted to it. And that's what also symbolizes a light, because a lighthouse is part of the symbol of Cape Cod, and the lighthouse was always an attraction for people, a beacon of security. And I think that a lot of people who come down to the Cape are looking for that warm, friendly beacon.
Cape Cod is just the sort of place where you would expect to find lighthouses. Over a period of about 100 years, 18 lighthouses were built on Cape Cod. Only a few still cast their life-saving beams out to sea. Yet taken together with the remains of several others, they comprise one of the most accessible collections of coastal lighthouses in the world.
There are numerous shipwrecks around the outer Cape. In fact, since the beginning of recorded history, I believe there have been about 3,000 shipwrecks. These shores early on were uncharted, so the ships were getting destroyed on these sandbars in the storms. And that was really the reason for the lighthouses. It was to preserve the cargo and the men on these ships. And they decided to create a lighthouse in the late 1700s on Cape Cod, and it would be the first lighthouse that ships would see as they came over from Europe.
That first lighthouse on Cape Cod was located in Truro, perilously close to the sea. Built in 1797, the Highland Lighthouse was rebuilt in the mid-1800s when the land beneath it crumbled into the sea. Known today as Cape Cod Lighthouse, this second structure faced a similar fate because of continued erosion. It was decided the only way to save the light was to move it. Greg O'Brien produced a film about moving the lighthouse.
What precipitated the need to move was the ocean itself, and not only did the ocean cause ships to wreck offshore, which really caused the lighthouses to be built, but the ocean also has eaten away steadily at Cape Cod. Well, it was an incredible move to watch. It was a combination of high-tech and common horse sense. They had to jack this light up, this huge structure, and then they had to move it literally inch by inch, and it would move basically 5 feet at a time, but so slowly it was like watching paint dry. And unless you were right next to the light, you couldn't even see it move. It's safe for a number of generations. If my family stays here on the Cape, generations from now, maybe my relatives will be involved in the next move.
The ocean side of Cape Cod has always been a dangerous place for those who make their precarious living from the sea. About halfway out from the mainland, the flashing beacon of Chatham Lighthouse casts its beam over an area that has seen many tragic wrecks and heroic rescues. Before lenses rotated or flashed, mariners needed to be able to tell one lighthouse from another. To differentiate it from nearby Highland Lighthouse, Chatham was given 2 towers. The North Tower was later moved to Easton, where it became the Nauset Beach Lighthouse. The remains of its base can still be seen at Chatham. The current lighthouse has survived on this site for over 100 years. 2 previous lighthouses were taken by the shifting sands and encroaching seas. The Three Sisters of Nauset was another attempt to differentiate early Cape Cod lighthouses. 3 identical lighthouses were built in 1838 at a point between the one light at Truro and the 2 lights at Chatham. They ultimately proved inefficient, and they were sold for various uses, including summer cottages. The 3 wooden towers were reunited by the National Park Service in 1975. They stand today in a wooded area near Nauset Beach, in the same relationship to each other as they did more than 100 years ago.
This is the one that was forgotten. This is the one that everybody walked away from, and there wasn't anybody doing anything with it. It just sat here for 20 years.
How close to the ground do you want to get with this?
About a foot from the bottom.
All right.
I don't want the water splashing so that it gets the foundation all mud.
Jim Walker spent more than 30 years in the Coast Guard working on lighthouses. Now he heads a group of volunteers restoring the Race Point Lighthouse along one of Cape Cod's most dangerous and desolate stretches. Hundreds of ships have ended their days on Race Point.
The race itself is a very strange place. It's literally miles and miles of nothing but sand dunes and beach grass. It's 2 miles in any direction to the nearest accessible road. We get here on a four-wheel drive vehicle, but there are a few stray people, I mean, energetic people that have walked down, and every once in a while somebody will stop in. I believe the Coast Guard had intended to tear it down if somebody didn't come along and do something with it and do it fairly quickly. Boards were on the windows and the place was full of mildew and it was abandoned. Somebody had stolen all the electrical panels and wires that were cut in the cellar, and the light fixtures were all missing, and it was just a nightmare to try to put it all back together again. If we added up all the tanks of gas and all the phone calls and all of the odds and ends and the things that we have brought down here, the price would be prohibitive. But weekly or a little bit at a time, it doesn't seem to hurt too bad. It has taken a long time, and we've still got a long way to go. There's many other things that need to be done. The rewards are few, but they're very, very valuable. Just to spend the night here, like I did Monday night, and watch that spectacular sunset, one night is worth an awful lot of work.
The nearby islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket have much in common with Cape Cod. Known today as summer playgrounds of the rich and famous, they share a similar history of struggle and survival in the hostile environment of the North Atlantic. Of the 5 lighthouses on Martha's Vineyard, the oldest and best known is Gay Head Light, named for the bright colors streaking the nearby cliffs. The present structure dates from 1856, when the lighthouse was fitted with a first-order Fresnel lens. Only the tower and automated light remain at the original site. Gay Head's Fresnel lens was moved across the island to the museum at the Martha's Vineyard Historical Society.
It's probably our most popular thing in the museum, and it's certainly the best known if you're trying to give directions to somebody how to get here, is just look for the light.
Bruce Andrews is director of the Martha's Vineyard Historical Society.
The Fresnel lens was an engineering marvel at the time, and this one was at the Gay Head Light from 1856 to 1952, so it sure served its purpose. The mechanics of how the lens turns is basically the same as a cuckoo clock or a grandfather clock. It's a weight-driven system. Gay Head was one of the last areas on Martha's Vineyard to get electricity. And after that area got electricity, they decided that the Fresnel lens wasn't necessary anymore. Another one could be used more efficiently. The first thought was, when they removed it, was to just smash it up and bury it so they wouldn't have to worry about it. But the winning plan was to move it to the site of the Historical Society and keep it so that it could be shared with the public.
Martha's Vineyard's maritime heritage and the wealth it generated are visible throughout Edgartown, center of the island's social and commercial life. Affluent sea captains built and lived in many of its magnificent homes. One of the most prominent buildings at Edgartown is the Old Whaling Church, with its 92-foot-high clock tower. It was built as a Methodist church in the 1840s. It gets its name from the fact that whaling money was used to pay for its construction. Edgartown Lighthouse sits on the western edge of the Edgartown Inner Harbor, opposite Chappaquiddick Island. The original light, established in 1828, was a tower on top of the keeper's house. It was replaced in 1939 by the current tower, which was floated on a barge from the mainland. Nearby Nantucket Island has a rich maritime history. In the 1700s, it was one of the largest whaling ports in the world. In modern times, Nantucket has transformed itself into a premier vacation resort. Nantucket's Brant Point Lighthouse is the second oldest lighthouse location in the United States. As many as 10 different lighthouses have stood on Brant Point over the past 2.5 centuries. The present structure, built in 1901, is one of the shortest lighthouses in operation today. Folklore suggests that tossing 2 pennies overboard as you round the lighthouse ensures a safe return.
The lighthouse is very impressive because it's up on top of the hill and in all its splendor of white and brown stripe and so forth. And it's green all around it except for the water, which is on 2 sides. And it's just very special, very quiet, very natural beauty here.
Dick White is chairman of the Montauk Historical Society's Lighthouse Museum Committee.
This is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The bluffs are some 80 feet tall, and you look out on the ocean, and on clear days you can see all the way up to Point Judith, Rhode Island, and back past New London, Connecticut. And if you're really tall, you can see Portugal.
Montauk Point Lighthouse stands at the easternmost tip of New York's Long Island, where generations of immigrants caught their first sight of America. The tower and buildings are among the best preserved and most popular lighthouse structures in the country.
The museum gets over 100,000 visitors a year. And then we have a diorama that shows all of the lighthouses along the Atlantic Ocean on Long Island, as well as Long Island Sound, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey. The kids love it. It's interactive. You press a button and the light on the lighthouse lights up, and pictures light up on the wall and give you a description of what's going on. And kids love that. So it's informative but fun at the same time. On a clear night, the 3.5 order bivalve lens would project a beam 19 nautical miles out to sea. When it was first put in, it was lit with kerosene, and it wasn't until 1938 that the Coast Guard electrified it and put a 1,000-watt bulb in it. And today, in the museum, we can only put a 40-watt bulb in, otherwise we blind people, because it's right at eye level. It's a very utilitarian piece of glass and brass, but it's also very pretty.
Almost the entire length of Long Island's South Shore is protected from the ocean by a stretch of narrow barrier beaches. The longest is Fire Island. Transatlantic vessels heading for New York Harbor generally aimed for the Fire Island Lighthouse. Like so many barrier islands, Fire Island has been constantly shifting since the lighthouse was built nearly a century and a half ago. Dave Grease is a park ranger at the Fire Island National Seashore.
Fire Island Lighthouse was on the tip of the western portion of Fire Island in 1825 when they built it originally. And since then, because the longshore current travels basically from east to west along Fire Island, it's built on another 5 or 6 miles where it is at the present time. So the lighthouse is not on the tip of Fire Island anymore. Fire Island is quite different. It's unique from the other typical ocean resorts because there are no vehicles within the communities or on Fire Island.
With no cars, residents have developed other ways of getting around. The little red wagons that dot streets and docks are an icon of Fire Island. They are used by homeowners and summer renters as a way to get food and other belongings to their homes. Once vessels passed the Fire Island Lighthouse, they began looking for the highlands of Navesink. The highlands rise 200 feet above the northern New Jersey shoreline. The Twin Lights of Navesink guided ships into and out of New York Harbor.
The first lighthouse was built here in 1828. They were two separate lighthouses. They did not connect like the current structure does. The replacement for those particular lighthouses was the structure that is now here, the 1862 Twin Lights, which was a connected building.
Thomas Laverty is the principal historic preservation specialist at the Twin Lights Historical Site.
The Twin Lights were designed to make it very distinctive from the Sandy Hook Lighthouse so that mariners would not mistake the two. Navesink is a very unique lighthouse in its architectural style. We're not 100% sure why it was designed like this. One of the favorite stories that a lot of our school kids like to hear is if you look at the square tower and the octagonal tower, they seem to resemble chess pieces, the king and queen of a chess set, and the entire building looks like a castle. If you look back in the 13th century, you can find a lot of castles that have very similar architectural details.
A lot of lighthouse history occurred at Navesink Twin Lights. The nation's first Fresnel lenses were installed here in 1841. Later, they became the first lights to be fueled by kerosene. With the installation of a massive bivalve lens in the South Tower in 1898, Twin Lights became America's first electrically powered lighthouse.
The bivalve lens is very significant because it was perhaps one of the brightest lighthouse lights in the United States. The first order bivalve lens is in our collection and had been on exhibit for a while when it was damaged, and it is now under repair. And once the prisms are replicated and installed, we will put it back on display for the public. It is a very big light. It's 9.5 feet in diameter. It weighs 10 tons. It has about 24 different glass prisms in it, and it rotated once every 10 seconds, and since it was double-sided, a bivalve shape, it gave a flash every 5 seconds. If people come today to visit Twin Lights, they won't find an actual operating lighthouse. We do keep the North Tower beacon going as sort of a memento, if you will, to the age when it worked as a light station. But today the lighthouse is a historic site and museum and operated by the state of New Jersey, and it's just a wonderful place to come on a beautiful afternoon or evening and sit and watch the ocean.
Just north of Navesink, Sandy Hook is the only survivor among the early colonial lighthouses. Built in 1764, the tower is the nation's oldest, still standing and operating navigational aid. Although located in New Jersey, Sandy Hook was known for many years as New York Lighthouse. It was financed by New York merchants, afraid of losing commerce to such better marked harbors as Boston. With over 4,000 miles of coastline, Chesapeake Bay is America's largest estuary. A century ago, no body of water in the country was better lighted. Fewer than a third of the lighthouses built on the Chesapeake remain today because of erosion, ice, and vastly improved technology. With several major ports, the Chesapeake is a maritime highway for ocean-going shipping. It also fosters a distinctive local waterman's culture.
We don't call them fishermen, we call them watermen. And I think that's mainly because we don't just fish here. We catch crabs, oysters, clams, all different types of seafood as well as fish.
Pat Votek is author of a book on Chesapeake Bay lighthouses. She has sailed just about everywhere on the bay.
This is not the type of job that, you know, if the weather is bad, you just stay in. Many of these guys go out in bad weather, they get caught in bad weather, and they're the type of people who they judge themselves by how many bad storms they've weathered. Many of the lighthouses were built to help guide watermen in the various rivers as well as to guide the steamboat captains. We don't have the rocks here that you have in Maine, so people didn't always perceive the type of problems that they would run into. However, we do have quite a few shoals, and this is what became treacherous in the Chesapeake Bay. You get a bad squall, which was fairly common, and you could lose ships on these shoals very, very quickly and very easily. Chesapeake Bay has more squat conical lighthouses than they have tall ones because we didn't have as long an area for a light to be cast over. Old Point Comfort is a good example of the conical lighthouse which had a detached dwelling. That light was built to guide vessels in the Hampton Roads, which is one of the two major harbors on the Chesapeake Bay. Jones Point is a perfect example of a very inexpensive dwelling with a lantern room on top that were common up rivers where you didn't have long distances that you had to throw a light. And these were generally cheaper ways of building a lighthouse.
The style of lighthouse most associated with the Chesapeake Bay is the screw pile lighthouse. These structures were placed on the open waters. They were literally screwed into the bottom of the muddy shoals. Of the more than 40 screw pile lighthouses built on the Chesapeake, only one remains at its original location. Thomas Point Lighthouse is the best known and most beloved lighthouse on the Chesapeake Bay.
It's about 25 from the rocks. About 15 feet from the rocks. He's up.
Even among the screw pile lights, Thomas Point was distinctive.
Peter Lesher is the curator of the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum.
If you look at Thomas Point, there's no mistaking you're at Thomas Point if you find it in the middle of a fog or something to that effect. The Thomas Point light is really remarkable in a couple of ways. One, in that it's in a rather exposed location just south of Annapolis. It's very subject to ice. Because of large piles of rock that protect it north and south, it has managed to survive the ice flows for more than a century. It remains the only screw pile lighthouse on the Chesapeake Bay in its original location. And it was the last lighthouse on the Chesapeake Bay that was still occupied by Coast Guardsmen. It wasn't automated until sometime in the 1980s.
Coast Guard Station Annapolis, Coast Guard Station Annapolis is Thomas Point Light.
Thomas Point Light Station Annapolis.
Running with the lights out. Call it to these Baltimore and come check it out. Over.
Roger that, Thomas Point Light.
While Thomas Point is not accessible to most people, there are a number of places around the bay to see examples of the screw pile lighthouse. The Hooper Strait Lighthouse is part of the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum at St. Michael's, Maryland. Museum curator, Peter Lesher.
Our lighthouse was the second structure built on that site. The first one was built in 1867, and after only 10 years of service, it suffered the fate of a number of other screw pile lighthouses. It got knocked off of its foundations by ice and sank rather quickly, apparently. The two lightkeepers were able to escape only with the clothes they were wearing. 2 years later, the replacement for it was built, which is the lighthouse that we have preserved today. It actually had a long, useful life. It was built in 1879 and served with lighthouse keepers in it until 1954, and at that time it was automated. The lighthouse remained automated until 1966, at which time it was slated for demolition by the Coast Guard and replacement by a pole light. And the museum really purchased the lighthouse from the demolition contractors and then paid to have it cut off at the top of its pilings and moved up here to the museum.
The oldest surviving example of the Chesapeake's classic screw pile lighthouses sits at Baltimore's popular Inner Harbor. Red, round, and all metal, 7-foot Knoll Lighthouse served for more than 130 years. In 1988, the 220-ton lighthouse was cut from its pilings and carried on a barge to its current home at Pier 5. The 1870s saw the development of the final style of lighthouse that came to be identified with the Chesapeake Bay. The caisson lighthouse, like the screw pile, was placed offshore, where it would do the most good on the dangerous shoals of the bay. Chesapeake Bay author and photographer Pat Votek.
The caisson light was the style that replaced many of the screw piles after they were destroyed by ice. These are mainly very sturdy, very strong. They were hauled to the site and then they were lowered down into the water and into the mud. At Baltimore Light, the caisson had to be lowered some 86 feet below the level of the water, and this is because that area was mud and they had to get down to solid ground. The 12 that were built on the Chesapeake Bay are all still standing. Most people don't realize that at its glory in 1900 there were over 60 lighthouses marking channels and rivers and shoals. You really, literally couldn't get out of sight of a lighthouse. We're very lucky that a few of them were saved. Lighthouses have a romantic quality to them. And I think it's not just because they're often beautiful architectures. The points of land that they were on were often very remote, wild, beautiful places. But then on top of that, you've got that struggle between man and nature that you knew went on there at the lighthouse. And it was the lighthouse that helped man to survive the struggle with nature.
One place where the struggle between man and nature is evident is at the southern end of the Chesapeake Bay. A lighthouse at Virginia's Cape Henry has marked the entrance to the bay for more than 200 years. Cape Henry didn't get its first lighthouse until after the Revolutionary War. It was the first to be built by the new federal government. President Washington supervised its construction. Nearly a century later, large cracks began to split the stone tower. Because of fears that the lighthouse might collapse, a new cast iron tower was built about 100 yards to the southwest. Standing 156 feet tall, the new Cape Henry Lighthouse began service to the Chesapeake Bay shipping lanes on December 15, 1881. It was fitted with a first-order Fresnel lens. The old sandstone lighthouse never did collapse and is now open to the public. Cape Henry is one of the only places where both the old and new towers remain standing. In the shadow of these aging aids to navigation is some of the most modern equipment in the world.
Calling the container ship Novorossiysk from the Virginia pilots. Yes, sir, Captain. Proceed in. We will board you on arrival, 1800 CBJ buoy. Charlie Bravo Juliet. Pilot on arrival.
The four-story tower that overlooks the Chesapeake Bay shipping lanes is operated by the Maryland and Virginia Pilots Association. One of these pilots must guide every foreign registered ship into and out of any Chesapeake Bay port.
We have a control tower at Lynnhaven that's very much like an air traffic control tower. That is the eyes and ears of the pilot station. It's manned 24 hours a day. We track every vessel that comes and goes at Cape Henry.
Rick Amory is president of the Virginia Pilots Association.
We meet the ships on their arrival, we board the ships, and assist the master in guiding the ship safely into the berth that they are going to. The pilot carries with him local knowledge, and when they board, they take the chart in their mind because they've had to memorize it. The 5-year apprenticeship is spent learning every shoal, every buoy, every characteristic of this port. At Cape Henry, we have 6 miles to transit before we get to the pilot boarding area. We greet them as they enter from the open ocean, from ports all over the world.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll scoop on the belt.
Good weather, it's a piece of cake.
Okay, thank you.
A very smooth ride, Bluebird Day, you climb up a Jacob's ladder with very little fanfare. But unfortunately, we don't always have Bluebird weather. We have tremendous wind at Cape Henry, tremendous sea conditions build up at Cape Henry. Cape Henry, I think, can probably be one of the roughest boarding areas in the country. Sometimes it's very tricky, and so we have to go on board ships with less than a perfect lee provided by the ship. There's a certain danger that's built in that pilots have a way of putting out of their minds. And if you didn't have that mechanism that would allow you to put that risk out of your mind, I don't think you could do this job. Lighthouses have been around for a long, long time. Cape Henry Lighthouse was here when I started my apprenticeship, and I have learned to depend on it, as I think every mariner that comes in and out of Cape Henry depends on Cape Henry Lighthouse. We have all kinds of radio equipment. We have all kinds of satellite navigation equipment. We have Lorans. We have depth sounders. We have compasses. We have all these wonderful things to tell us where we are. But when your eye sees the light of Cape Henry Lighthouse at night, it sees its red sector or it sees its white sector, you know where you are. The lighthouse is there. It doesn't go out, it doesn't move, it's always in the same place, and you can always depend on it.